Good morning, boys and girls, and welcome back to math. So, as you can see in front of you, we have a set of vocabulary words that we need to go over before we continue on with our lesson for today. So, the title of our vocabulary list is Input and Output Table Vocabulary, and that is going to be our main focus for today, understanding how to read and solve input and output tables. So we are slowly transitioning back into reading data and recognizing patterns within data. So we're going to go over these vocabulary words. These words are available for you on Schoology as well. I'm just going to briefly go over these really quick, and then we will get right to the lesson. So we have input and output table, okay? And the definition of that is a table which represents how the application of a rule on a value. All right, so what that means is with every table, there's a rule. So the rule can be either we're adding a certain number, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing. There's always a rule when it comes to these tables. So a table which represents how the application of a rule on a value, input, results in a different value, output. So there are two sides of the table. You have one set of numbers on the left-hand side and a second set of numbers on the right-hand side. You will see a visual in just a moment. All right, so then we have a table show. So a table show relationships between values in a pair of numbers. So what's the relationship between those numbers? Then we have additive numerical pattern. So a pattern that occurs when a constant non-zero value is added to an input value to determine the output. The key word here is added, okay? So that means that the rule is their numbers are being added to it. Then we have multiplicative numerical pattern. So a pattern that occurs when a constant non-zero value is multiplied by an input value to determine the output value. So basically the rule is right here that you are multiplying numbers. And these are really, the last two right here, they're just really important for you to recognize when we are working with tables like this. Sets may or may not begin with number 1. It's not always going to be starting with 1. Sometimes it might start with 5 or 10 or 20. So always remember, it's not always going to start at 1. And then also, sets may or may not be listed in sequential order. So it might be, so just because you might notice a pattern, don't make guesses, because on purpose they like to switch the tables up to see if you can find the rule without recognizing the pattern. So really important for you guys to know this before we get into our lesson for today. So now we're going to be actually practicing with an actual input and output table. So before I get into these two problems, I'm going to label which side is going to be the input, which one's going to be the output. So for this question right here, this side is going to be the input, and this side is going to be the output. Okay, so the input is numbers that we start with, and the output is the numbers that we end up with after we find out what is the rule between how we got from 1 to 6, okay? So let's read the directions before we go ahead and get started on this. Read each question. After, find the missing input or output for each table. Determine what the table is multiplying, adding, or dividing by, okay? We don't know, because sometimes a table could be one of these, okay? So now, why don't we go ahead and get started with this question right here. What is the missing number? Okay, so we have our inputs. We got 1, 2, 3. Makes it nice. And these are number of trees. So one tree has, and then these are apples on each tree. There are 6 apples to one tree, okay? Then from here we have 2 trees have 12 apples, okay? Then we're going to have 3 trees, and we need to find out how many apples that is. So we need to find out, how did we get from 1 to 6? Are we adding numbers Or are we multiplying numbers? Or dividing? Well, with dividing, we already know that we would be making this number and turning it smaller. So it wouldn't be dividing. So it's between multiplying and adding. So why don't we go ahead and give it a try? Let's try adding. So 1 plus what would get us 6? 1 plus 5. So let's see. So 1 plus 5 equals 6. Okay. And boys and girls, when it comes to the rule, we have to use the same number for every row. Because if it doesn't work out, then obviously that is not our rule. Okay? These types of math problems have a set of rules. If the rule doesn't apply to every number, it doesn't work. And that rule is canceled out. We can't use it anymore, okay? The rule has to work for the entire table, not just one, the entire table, okay? So what if we were to add 5 to 2? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Well, that doesn't work. So adding does not work for this. So adding is not our rule. So what we are left with is multiplying. So 1 times what would get us 6? 6. Okay, so let's try this. Now let's do 2 times 6. Does that equal 12? It does. All right, so now we know that we can multiply 3 times 6 is going to give us our new answer. So boys and girls, what is 3 times 6? Is it 21, 18, 12, or 33? Let's find out. An easy way to do this, we can write 3 6 times, or, we can add 3 6 times, or we could do circles, 3 circles, with 6 dots in each one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 5, 6. So then we got 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So 18 would be our missing number. So boys and girls, you need to know that you cannot find the missing number until you find the rule of this table. Now, the rule for this table is multiplying by 6. And hopefully you watched the introduction video before you started this video to kind of help you understand and recognize how input and output tables work, okay? And if you haven't, make sure you go back and you watch the first video that I posted. It was step 1 for a reason. Okay, why don't we go ahead to this table right here. This is our input table, what we're starting with, and this is our output table, what we're going to be ending up with. All right, so we go from, so we got number of tables, and then number of people at each table. Okay, so we have one table fits 3 people, 2 tables fit 6, 3 tables fit 9. Oh, we're jumping, so we're going all the way to 6 now. All right, so we have 6 tables fit how many people? Well, first of all, we need to find what is our rule, okay? So how do we get from 1 to 3? Are we going to be adding, multiplying, or dividing? Now remember, boys and girls, when we are dividing, it means we're making numbers smaller. So did we jump from small to smaller? No, we jumped from small to big. So division would not work for this. Why don't we try either multiplying or adding now? So I'm just going to really look at this, because if I add 2, so if I did an addition, if I were to add, so 1 plus what would make 3? That would be 2. But if I did 2 plus 2, it doesn't equal 4, so adding wouldn't work either. So we would have to use multiplication. So 1 times what equals 3? 3. All right, 2 times 3 equals, does it equal 6? It does. Okay, let's keep going. So 3 times 3 equals 9. All right, and then we have 6 times 3 equals, well, hey, wait a minute. This is kind of helping us from what we found from last time. So 6 times 3 is 18. So our missing number was 18. Okay, so boys and girls, you need to make sure that there's 2 steps in order to solve these problems. You have to find the rule, and then you can find your missing answer. Okay? We're going to do 2 more, and then you're going to practice this on your own in Schoology. Oh, 3, excuse me. All right, so here we go. What is the missing number? Okay, let's go over this then. Let me see if I can zoom in just a little bit more. Okay, there we go. Okay, so we have number of trees, all right, and then apples on each tree. So we have 1 tree has 8 apples this time. 2 trees has 16 apples. 3 trees have, oh, we don't know. Okay, so obviously we can kind of rule out that we're not going to be using division because remember, from small to big, we're not dividing. So I'm just going to start with multiplication. That might be our best bet. So 1 times what would get us 8? 8. And remember, it has to, 8, so times 8 has to work for all these numbers because if it doesn't, then that's not our rule. We got to start over and try and find out what would work. So let's try 2 times 8. Does that equal 16, boys and girls? Yes, it does. So the rule of 8 makes sense. So 3 times 8. So we need to know, is 3 times 8 24, 33, 55, or 12? So I'm going to make this easier and use repeated addition. Boys and girls, you should have these multiplication facts memorized by now. But if you haven't, you always have strategies to help you. So I'm going to write 8 plus 3 times. So we have 8 plus 8 plus 8. Okay? So 8 plus 8 is 16. And then plus 8, that gives me 24. So our rule for this table is times 8, but our missing number was 24. Notice 2 steps. Yes, you have to show all your work when it comes to these problems, so make sure you do so when you go back and do this on your own. All right. Number of tables, number of people at each table. Okay, so we have 1 table, 2 people fit. 2 tables, 4 people fit. 3 tables, 6 people fit. And we're jumping all the way to 8. All right, so 8 tables fits how many people? So I'm going to stick with the pattern of multiplying. So I'm going to do times. So 1 times 2 equals 2. 2 times 2 equals 4. 3 times 2 equals 6. So the rule of 2 has worked for all of these, so I'm going to use it for 8. So 8 times 2 equals what, boys and girls? 13, 12, 16, or 15? 16. Very good. All right, going to our last one, and then you guys will go off on your own. There we go. See the bottom here? Okay, so find what is the missing number. Now, boys and girls, it is written horizontally instead of vertically. That's okay. It's still the same information that we've been working with, but it's just showing us in a different way. So, for this row, we have number of ants. So, 1 ant, 2 ant, not sure, and then 6 ants. So, number of legs. So, for 1 ant has 6 legs. 2 ants have 12. And we don't know how many ants there are, but we do know there's 24 legs. And then we have 6 ants have 36 legs. Now, boys and girls, this would be our input, and this row would be our output. Now, with that being said, we don't know one of our inputs. So, we're going to need to work backwards. How would we get from 6 to 1? We're going from a big number to a small number. That's your clue. What would you use? Division. What would you divide by to get 1? 6 divided by 6 equals 1. Because 6 times 1 gets you 6. Okay? So you could go 1 times 6 equals 6. Okay? But we're going backwards, so we're going to be using division. So 12 divided by 6 equals 2. So now we have 24 divided by 6 equals what? Because we know 36 divided by 6 equals 6, because 6 times 6 equals 36. And division problems are basically the opposite of multiplication. So 6 times what number would get us 24? Is that going to be 3, 4, 7, or 1? If you don't know, then you could do 6 circles, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and put an even amount of tally marks in each circle until you add up 24. So you could go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. And you notice in each circle there are 1, 2, 3, 4. So that would be our answer, 4. So boys and girls, there's always 2 steps. You need to find the rule of the table. Then you can find the missing number. So always remember that, boys and girls. So with that being said, now it is your turn to go back into Schoology and to complete the assignment that is given to you. If you have any questions, please remember that you can always join me on Zoom at 9 a.m. I am there to help reteach and to solve any questions you may have. It has been a pleasure to teach you this morning, and I will talk to you next time. Bye!